Hello and welcome back to another theory video. Today I'm going to explain different forms of notation in music and why they are important. First, let's start with guitar tablature. Guitar tabs have 6 horizontal lines representing the 6 strings on a guitar, which are E, A, D, G, B, and E an octave higher. Numbers are placed on the strings to show where to put your fingers on the fretboard. For example, the number 3 placed on the low E string would indicate to place your finger on the 3rd fret of that string. Tabs are also used by bass guitarists. They work in the same way as other guitar tabs, however, they only have 4 lines representing 4 strings instead, which are E, A, D, and G. Tabs are read from left to right and usually have no indication of rhythm. Guitarists usually have to listen to the song or piece to learn the rhythm. However, some forms of tablature, like you can see on the screen, have bar lines, note stems, rests, and a time signature to present the rhythm and timing of the piece. Different technique symbols can be put in guitar tabs to show the guitarist what techniques they should be using when playing the piece. Here are some common symbols on the screen now. Here is a basic example of a guitar tab for the chorus of A Lover's Quarrel by my band Oddity. Here is what it would sound like when played. Next, I'm going to explain tonic solfa. Tonic solfa uses alternate names or syllables and hand signs to represent the different note pitches in a musical scale. This form of notation is often used to teach sight singing in a choir. The syllables that are used are do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, and then do again. These symbols can be used to represent any musical scale. This is an example of me singing a C scale in tonic solfa. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The picture on the screen shows the corresponding hand signs for these syllables. When using these hand signs, the hand position also rises as the pitch of the notes rise. For example, the lower do is placed at your belly button and the upper do is placed at eye level. Here is the chorus melody of A Lover's Quarrel by Oddity, written in tonic solfa. It would sound like this. Do, do, ti, la, sol, mi. Mi, sol, fa, fa, mi, do, sol, fa, mi. Next are graphic scores. A graphic score is a form of notation that uses pictures, lines, shapes, colours, and text to represent a piece of music instead of traditional notes. This form of notation can lead to more freedom to interpretation for a performer, as they can decide how to translate the visual elements into sound. Here is an example of a graphic score for the structure of A Lover's Quarrel. I have created a graph using different colours, shapes, and text to visually represent when each instrument should play. The graphic score could be used alongside other pieces of notation, such as guitar tabs and drum notation, to help musicians play the full piece. Next, I'm going to talk about drum notation, but first, here is a standard drum kit setup. You have the hi-hat, tom 1 and tom 2, the crash cymbal, the ride cymbal, the floor tom, and the kick or bass drum. Drum notation is written on a traditional stave with 5 lines and 4 spaces. However, the lines and spaces are used to represent the different parts of the kit instead of different note pitches. A percussion clef is placed at the start of a line of music to show this. In drum notation, a dot is used to represent a drum, and an X is used to represent a symbol. Here is an example of what the drum notation would look like for the third chorus of A Lover's Quarrel. You can see the percussion clef drawn at the start to indicate that this music is for the drum kit. The lowest notes on the stave with the dots represent the bass drum, which would sound like this. The highest notes on the stave with crosses represent the closed hi-hat, which would sound like this. Here is what this notation would sound like when played all together. Next are chord charts. A chord chart is often used by guitarists to show them how to play different chords in a piece of music. For example, on the screen now is a C major chord. The 6 vertical lines represent the guitar strings, while the horizontal lines represent the fretboard. The 3 black dots indicate where to place your fingers, and the X at the top of the chart tells you not to play that string, whereas the O's at the top of the chart tell you to leave the string open and to play it with the chord. Here is what the chord would sound like when played. Here are the chord charts that a guitarist could use when playing the chorus of A Lover's Quarrel. Here is what they would sound like. G major, E major, A minor, C major, and D major. Finally, I'm going to explain lead sheets. A lead sheet is a simplified form of notation that shows only the melody, the lyrics, if the piece has them, and the chord symbols for a piece or song. The melody is usually written in traditional notation. A lead sheet allows musicians to improvise during the piece and create their own arrangement for the accompaniment. This form of notation is commonly used for pop and jazz music. Here is an example of a lead sheet for the chorus of A Lover's Quarrel. Musicians can use this sheet to learn the vocal melody and harmony for the chorus. This is what the melody and harmony would sound like played on the piano. Musicians on guitar or piano could then use the chord symbols to create their own accompaniment, and the drummer could create their own drum pattern to go along with the melody and harmony on vocals. Different forms of notation are important because they give musicians an easier way to notate parts for different instruments that cannot be easily written out in traditional notation, like the guitar or drum kit. They are also important because they make reading music accessible to everyone. I think it's important to create multiple different ways for people to read and play music without having to learn to read traditional notation. And finally, I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching this video.